expression. Here is the 7th International Summer University, Greek language, culture, and mass media. It's really a great moment, the greatest, I could say, for this academic action, to have you in the Zoom platform. But we really hope, we do hope, that we are going sometime to meet you in person. So are you ready to begin our conversation?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Wonderful. Dear Polly, we would like to thank you, first of all, for the honor to have you here with us today. To begin with, can you please share a few words with us about how this relationship that you have with the island of Hydra was built?
Yes, so I loved coming to Greece most of my life, you know, lots and lots of lovely places in Greece. And when I'd finished in 2014 writing the novel before this one, I wanted to have a little break for the half-term holiday with my children. And we'd left it all a bit to the last moment, but we knew we wanted to go somewhere peaceful and beautiful, where we could swim and just take it easy and be with our children. And we came to Hydra without really knowing anything about it, apart from that it didn't have traffic. And that was a huge, huge pull, really, was to be somewhere with no cars. And we did what people do on Hydra. We sat around, we relaxed, and we spent a lot of time talking. But the really life-changing thing that happened to me on that trip was that I read Charmian Cliff's memoir, Peel Me a Lotus, which was written in 1956. And Charmian Cliff was an Australian writer, married to another Australian writer called George Johnston. And long before people did these sorts of things, they had, with their 2 small children, moved to Greece, first of all to the island of Kalymnos, where she wrote a wonderful memoir called Mermaid Singing. And then a year later, in 1950, where some people will have seen the house. It's the house by the well, just up from the port, with the beautiful bougainvillea. And the memoir just captured my attention, this idea of this family integrating in the way that they did and trying to make their lives just by writing, and the lives of their children, and her thoughts about the meaning of life and the things that she discovered while living, you know, as a total foreigner, not really speaking the language at all, found I just wanted to know more. And so when we got back, I did what we do. I Googled her and was astonished to find these very famous pictures that I'd seen before but had never really taken in who the woman was, sitting next to Leonard Cohen under the tree in Duskos Taverna while he played what was purported to be his first concert. So that sort of interested me also, because I was an enormous Leonard Cohen fan. And then the next thing that came up were these photographs, and I found that there were 1,573 of them. And by a stroke of luck, I got to see them. And then, of course, I was absolutely hooked on all of those people in those famous photographs. And I then started researching who they all were and became fascinated by the community and the times that they were living through, and particularly actually the women and the times that they were living through, because the photographs were all taken in 1960, which was a sort of transformative time for women, and also, you know, for thinking and new ways of living. And so really, since that moment in 2014, when I read Peel Me a Lotus, I don't think I've thought about anything much but Hydra and those people. Yes, so that's the short answer.
Well, your book, A Theatre for Dreamers, will be published in Greece.
Yes, I'm thrilled by Pataki in
Wonderful
September.
News. A Theatre for Dreamers is a 2020 literary fiction novel. It is a fictionalized account of life on the Greek island of Hydra in the 1960s, featuring real-life characters who lived here at the time, including Leonard Cohen, Charmian Cliff, and George Johnston. Would you like to share with us, Polly, some details about it? What was your source of inspiration for this book?
Well, I mean, as I've said, my source of inspiration were the people, particularly Charmy and Clift. At first, the idea that Leonard Cohen was one of this community was a little inhibiting because I'm an enormous fan, and the idea of having to put Leonard Cohen in this book, and I knew that he still had a house on Hydra, and I knew that I would have to go to Hydra a lot to research the book. And so for the first 2 years of the research, I didn't quite know how I was going to do it, because I had this sort of idea that somehow I might run into Leonard Cohen, and it would be terribly sort of mortifying to say, oh, you know, because on Hydra, as you're there now, you know, you can't not run into people. It's so small, and you know, everyone is gathered at the port, you know, every morning for coffee, and you would always see people. And then it got to 2016, and I was back on Hydra in the wake of Marianne Eland's death, you know, Marianne of the song So Long Marianne. And while I was there, Leonard Cohen died. And at that moment, a voice came into my head and said, and on the same day that Leonard Cohen died, there was the election in America and the new president. And this voice came into my ear and said, well, at least Leonard has been spared this. And that was the voice of Erica, who is the narrator of my book, who in 1960, which is when most of the book takes place in the year 1960, she is there as an 18-year-old girl trying to work out what life can be like for a woman of her era among these wonderful, free-thinking people. And that was really when I found the way to write it. It was that moment sitting at what is now Rolio. Is it pronounced Rolio? I never know. Rolly, which was Katsakas in those days, which we have a sort of a backdrop of here of how it was in 1960. It's now Rolly, but it's the same family, the Katsakas family. And there I was sitting there, and I just knew now that I could tell the story through the eyes of this 18-year-old English girl, and then that would be almost like a portal to put the reader among the community, which was a wonderful way to do it. And it was a wonderful way to write it, because I also felt that I was among the community while I was writing it, and that was a very nice place to be.
Polly, you have lived a life with very important people next to you and with a lot of creative goals. Can you tell us in which fields you look for the balance and the beauty of this life?
In which, sorry, I didn't catch the full question there, Nicoletta. It's in which? Sorry.
Να το επαναλάβω, γιατί δεν έχω και πολύ καλό. Dear Polly, you have lived a life with very important people next to you and with a lot of creative goals. Can you tell us in which fields you look for the balance and the beauty of life?
I think I'm not quite understanding the question. The balance and beauty of life.
What was the meaning of the beautiful life? What is beautiful life for you? What does this? What
family
is this?
easy. Okay, family and nature. Family and nature above all else. I mean, above all art is nature, and above all beauty is family. And those are the things that sustain me and always will, and are, you know, the things that I get the most pleasure and inspiration from. And, you know, there's so much beauty on Hydra, and so, you know, the nature and the fact that there are no cars makes it an exceptional place where things can flourish that just wouldn't flourish if there were roads and vehicles and that sort of pollution and noise. I think being on an island like Hydra is an extraordinary thing, and you know, is it really sustaining to be able to be somewhere where you really do feel like you have managed to step back in time And that really is to do with the absence of roads and cars and aeroplanes, I think. It's a great luxury and something that we don't find in enough places. And so it's very special.
The planet is currently being tested by the pandemic. What changes did this new situation bring in your life, and what positive, perhaps, message do you want to draw from this disastrous situation we all live?
I don't know what the positive situation will be, because who knows how this is playing out. In England, we have a crazy government who have just announced that they are not going to protect the people anymore. No one is going to wear a mask. We are just being left to have what, all the scientists have told us is impossible, herd immunity. They're going to allow 200 people a day to die unnecessarily. I am disgusted with our own government, and I just have to sort of say that in this context. In terms of my life, really, because a set of circumstances really to do with the book coming out. I was on IDRA in March. Everything seemed like it was just we weren't at that point aware of just what was happening. We got back on, I think, the 10th of March to England, and I was going to do a series of events for A Theatre for Dreamers, which were going to be music and poetry, and we booked halls in England and literary festivals. And my son and my daughter-in-law are both set designers and had built this set of Katsikas, the grocery store that famously was the meeting place of the community. And this was going to travel around with us and be the backdrop. And because they were putting the finishing touches to it, they got locked down with us. And so, I was getting ready at that point in my life to have what we call an empty nest. My children were all about to be gone. And suddenly, for various reasons to do with making this backdrop and to do with, schools not reopening, all my children were at home and got locked down with us. And it was a really, if one can take anything positive from it, it is that we found that we worked as a family. We were, we really did take it very carefully. We took lockdown incredibly seriously, well beyond when the government lifted restrictions. We were protecting my husband, who's a bit older than me, but all of us, none of us wanted to get this thing. And we stayed locked down, and we managed to find happiness being just together. Although, outside was this terrible anxiety and despair about the world, we found there was great happiness in what we could do together. And so my daughter started singing with my husband in a way that she hadn't before. And that was a really lovely thing, because we found that they have this beautiful blend, and she started playing the harp more. And we eventually, once we could all concentrate again, and once we got over the thing of trying to distract ourselves with television, which actually wasn't working, we all would very peaceably find that, the greatest thing were the books that we were reading and talking about books. And it became, and quite an old-fashioned idea of family in a way. We cooked together, we found food, we sort of had that feeling like it, slightly apocalyptic, that we were just here together. But it was a very nice time, if one could ignore what was going on, for the family. And we then did something that none of us ever dreamt we'd do, which was we started doing some live streams, because we had this sort of feeling that we did want to have some contact with the outside world, even though we had cut ourselves off so completely. And we found that we really enjoyed doing that. We called ourselves the Von Trapped family. And actually, we thought maybe 5 people would watch it, but it turned out to be something that lots of people watched. And that became rather sustaining for us to get the sort of feedback. So I think that we managed to find some good times within this terrible time, and the good times were provided just by the family members. So yes, that, and also, the year you started noticing just how beautiful the countryside is. You've got more time for all of these things, you know, no longer going anywhere, and suddenly watching everything unfold, the spring becoming summer, and then appreciating every moment of change. So in terms of nature, it was a very beautiful time as well. But, you know, terrible every time you thought about anything beyond our own environment.
You shared with us very important messages, and we hear them with great attention. Well, Polly, this year we are discussing in the 7th International Summer University, we are discussing the language and the freedom of expression with our students. What does freedom of expression mean to you? How do you use, for example, the language in your writings to express yourself, to express the freedom, to express freely yourself?
I think in the world of social media, it becomes much harder to express yourself freely. And I have to forget that there will ever be anyone reading a book in order to write anything. And that is something that I have the great luxury of doing because I write fiction. And so I can get in everything I want to say in a novel. And that is indeed a very sort of free thing to do. I mean, I was able to discuss the situation of women and what I think about the situation of women in a way that wouldn't be as strident as if I were sort of taking to Twitter and doing a tweet about, you know, inequality. So I feel that, you know, wrapping things in fiction is quite a luxurious way to have freedom of expression. I think that we are all suffering from a terrible lack of freedom of expression at the moment. I know that in my daily life there are many, many things I would like to shout about, really, and, you know, and I just don't do it. I wish we all did more of it. I wish we all felt less inhibited, really, by the sort of piles-ons and people's misunderstandings. I think there's a great need suddenly that has grown up through social media for everyone to feel so outraged all the time, and it's a sort of outrage that's rather limiting, because it's not an outrage that leads to action. And certainly in our country, you know, we had a great clamping down on freedom of expression. People are no longer able to protest, and I think that that is an enormous injustice to society, because, you know, without protest, where is progress? Where are the people's voices being heard? They're not being heard on Twitter, not really. You know, we do need to be able to get out there and say what we think, and gather and say what we think. And, you know, there's, you know, the long tradition throughout all the civilized world has been that people have been able to do this. And certainly in England, you know, there are very strict rules now about what people can do and about how angry they can be. And there are so many social injustices, and people should be angry, and they should be allowed to express that anger, but, you know, they end up in prison. And, you know, that is not a free society when, you know, people are not allowed to gather and express their anger about things that really, really are wrong. And so, yes, I think that we all should work on being able to withstand the consequences of our freedom of expression. If there are things that we feel strongly about, we just have to find a way to deal with the clamping down on all of us that is happening, and get out there and find a way to have our voices heard, and, you know, if possible, not go to prison.
Thank you. The book, your book, The Theatre of Dreamers, is going to be published, as I said before, in Greek by Patakis Editions. Anna Patakis is there, as I know. When is it going to be presented, and when are we going to keep it in our hands? Do we know?
It's coming out in September, and I hope very much to come to Greece then. Who knows? I mean, the problem is there are no plans that anyone can make. I don't know what is going to happen. I mean, the way that our country is going, I wouldn't be surprised if every other country in the world wouldn't want anyone traveling from our country. I mean, we're letting the virus run wild, and You know, I hope very much to be able to come to Greece in September.
This was my next question. When do you plan to come to Greece and have the privilege maybe to meet you in person and the students here? Who knows? Because the organizational committee of our summer university would like to award you for your work and especially for this novel and the whole contribution in promoting Greece and the cultural identity of the island of Hydra. The award is the honorary speaker of our summer university.
Oh, well, that is
we do expect you to come.
Indeed.
Pardon?
I said that is a great honor, indeed. Thank you so much. September is the intention, but you know, we just have to pray, really, that we can travel and that we have this thing under control.
We do wish the best. I would like, at this moment, because I don't want to get you tired with this conversation, I would like to ask from our technical presenter here to give us a view of our small audience, because this year, Polly, we accepted as an academic action, as university, a very small number of students. So here in this classroom, we are just about 20 students, but all the others, they participate distance, of course, by distance. So, if you want, just to give a hug to Polly, just to give you a view, αν μπορείτε, κυρία Κόκο, να χαιρετήσουμε όλοι μαζί, to send you from Hydra our love and tell you that we do miss you, we do want you to meet you in person. So, can you see our students here? Hi, Paula.
Hi.
And this is...
I wish I was there.
This is the Dean of the University of Thrace. This is Penelope Kabakis. All of us admire your work. So, we send you our love, our gratitude.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And it was really the greatest moment of our conference. We hope we'll meet you in person. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Paula. Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
And the best for the book, the best for the Theatre of Dreamers
so
in
much.
Greek. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Στα ελληνικά, εκδόσεις Πατάκη. Πολύ ωραία. Έχει ολοκληρωθεί η σύνδεση, παιδιά, την έκανε. Έχει ήδη μεταφραστεί. Είναι η σύνδεση ακόμη? Έχει τελειώσει η σύνδεση? Παιδιά, ήταν γλυκύτατη, μήπως ήταν υπέροχη. Παιδιά, λοιπόν...